I can't believe they're doing this. I know. I cannot believe that this is happening. Wait, you think I'm talking about impeachment? No. No, I'm not talking about impeachment inquiries into Joe Biden. I'm talking about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, damn it. Oh, my God. Oh, gosh. Don't do it, Travis. Don't do it, my man.
Somebody want a song written about them?
Maybe, apparently. Oh, my goodness. When I saw this news come out yesterday afternoon that Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are reportedly hanging out, that's the headline from Daily Mail, I thought to myself, all right, this is how dynasties get destroyed. This is how great teams, great cultures get ruined. You get a guy with a big head who gets, involved with the wrong person, and then the whole thing collapses around you.
See, I think this is the right person for Travis, though.
Why?
Because remember, he doesn't like to pay for dates. So that doesn't or this helps him because, she doesn't need his help, So I think they can be good for each other.
Okay, there's a lot more. Mark, you know this. How long have you been married now, Mark?
12 years.
Okay. All right. Then you know this, just like the rest of us. There's a lot more to life than who's picking up the check.
I know, that's true.
I mean, there's plenty of wealthy women out there. This is 2023. This is not 1923. He can find a woman who can buy herself dinner that isn't Taylor Swift. Come on, Mark.
This might be a good time for both of them, though. Like, they're at that stage in their lives where they're both big enough that they don't have to, squibble
Stop
in and out.
finding excuses. John, he's trying to find excuses for this.
No, I'm just looking for the name. What are we going to call this? The Tay-C relationship?
Tay-C, I like that.
Yeah,
K-Swift? I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, man, when I saw this
Man
yesterday.
Gets girl, man loses girl, man has broken heart.
Yeah.
Man, this is playoff game.
Here's the thing. She's going to dump him right before, the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, right.
And then he's going to,
bummed.
crap the bed or something like that. Oh, my goodness. Now, certainly would be quite a power couple to have here in Kansas City. But I would argue that it would be a bigger power couple than Patrick and Brittany Mahomes just because of how big of a star she is. I mean, she's the biggest star in the world right now.
Jumping ahead of Harry and Meghan this week. It's Taylor and Travis at number 2.
That's Meghan and Harry to you, John. Yeah. Come on now. Oh, my gosh. Oh, I want no part of this. And I really have no issues with Taylor Swift. But find me a guy who went into a relationship with Taylor Swift and came out better on the other side. Can you think of any?
Maybe Harry Styles.
Maybe. Debatable, but maybe. Maybe. This just feels to me like Travis Kelce's hitting the rock star phase of his career where, and I'm not saying he's not going to have a productive season when he comes back from that knee injury, but I'm a little nervous that with the podcast and the Taylor Swift rumors and the SNL and all this stuff, have we seen the best of Travis Kelce on the football field? Now, I would argue yes, just because he's 33 years old, and I hate to say it, but in the NFL, 33 is typically on the backside, especially at that position. But now, he's busy with Taylor Swift. The only good thing that might come out of this, if they make it work, is that we may get 3 Taylor Swift concerts at Arrowhead next summer instead of only 2. Maybe that's a perk, and the tickets are an $800 to sit in the nosebleeds. But outside of that, man, I don't love it. And never mind, I hope he doesn't take her out in the plaza, Suddenly, you got fights and shootings and all these other... What the hell's going on in this town? Who runs this place? Give me Mayor Q on the phone.
Like you said, Travis is getting closer to that retirement age. We don't want to talk about it yet, but maybe he does want to settle down.
I respect a man that wants to settle down. I do. But you can settle down with a lot of other folks. A lot of other women out there. A lot of fish in the sea there, Travis. Come on, my man.
Guess who's going to Frankfurt, Germany?
Yeah. Oh, geez. Well, we'll monitor this new relationship that is apparently starting to become public. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. Oh, my goodness gracious. Welcome in on a Wednesday morning. Now, of course, impeachment on the news side, but you think I was going to start the show without mentioning Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift? Come on now. The impeachment inquiry that the Republicans are now moving full steam ahead with when it comes to Joe Biden. Kevin McCarthy made the announcement yesterday. It came down after the show wrapped up. In case you missed it, here's what Kevin McCarthy had to say.
And corruption. And they warrant further investigation by the House of Representatives. That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. This logical next step will give our committees the full power to gather all the facts and answers for the American public. It's exactly what we want to know, the answers. I believe the president would want to answer these questions and allegations as well. This effort will be led by Chairman James Comer at the Committee on Oversight, in coordination with Chairman Jim Jordan for Judiciary Committee and Chairman Jason Smith on Ways and Means. Now, I do not make this decision lightly.
Now, you heard the name mentioned there by Kevin McCarthy, Jason Smith, Ways and Means Chairman, right here on KCMO Talk Radio, coming up at 7:05. To take you behind the scenes a little bit, I reached out to Jason Smith's team yesterday. I said, hey, can we get the congressman on the show tomorrow since he's helping lead the impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden? And, I'm not calling anybody out because this happens with all the politicians. Oh, man, he's slammed tomorrow. Yeah, I'm not sure we can make it work. And I said, okay, who else should I said, do you guys recommend somebody else? Is there somebody else I can get on that you would recommend I bring on? And then suddenly it was, well, I think he's got 10 minutes at 7:05. So it's funny how that works sometimes, you know. You got to make them jealous, kind of like dating.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Works with babysitters, too.
Yeah. It does work. So he's going to be here at 7:05 this morning. And here's the thing. This is an impeachment inquiry that was not voted on by the House. So what that tells me is that Kevin McCarthy, who is a very slim majority in the House of Representatives, does not have the votes amongst Republicans to move ahead with real impeachment. I don't want to say this is fake impeachment, but this isn't much different than what they've been doing. You've already had these committees investigating Hunter Biden, and obviously what matters the most here is what Joe Biden knew and how much Joe Biden is involved. That's what ultimately matters. That's what's going to rise to the level of potentially impeaching the guy in the House, right? That's it. So there's not a big difference here between where we were yesterday morning and where we are today. It's more of a formal inquiry. All right, we've got an impeachment inquiry out there, but are there downsides to this? And that's been the question over the last 18 hours or so. What are the potential pitfalls to moving ahead with this? Because you know and I know the media is going to do whatever they can, whatever they need to do to protect the old man from this inquiry and turn him into the victim, even though he's anything but that, and he appears to be nothing but an old, corrupt, senile, politically dirty man. But does that mean yesterday's move was wise? We'll get into more of that coming up. Jason Smith just after 7 o'clock. He's going to be leading the way on the impeachment inquiry. So it's all coming up. 913-408-7710 as we get it rolling on a Wednesday. Pete Mundo on KCMO. Yeah, there's a downside to the impeachment inquiry of Joe Biden, but I'm not going to lie. I've got two lanes that I think about with the impeachment inquiry that was launched into Joe Biden yesterday by Kevin McCarthy. There's the emotional side, and the emotional side is incredibly appealing. The emotional side is this old, corrupt man who we pretend to be running the country. It's time to show his true colors. It is not new to anybody that Joe Biden has used his position as, decades-long senator to vice president to now president to obviously enrich family members. Now, how much he knew, that obviously remains to be seen. But from his son to his brother, there clearly was an operation here that was simply about peddling influence to Joe Biden to then influence foreign policy and things of that nature, and it made a lot of people a lot of money. I don't want to say it made them rich because it appears that Hunter Biden may not have any money left because all his money went to blowing hookers, as far as we can tell. So I can't say it made him rich, but it made him a lot of money. And his brother as well. His brother appears to be rich, but Hunter not so much. So the emotional side of me is after watching Trump get railroaded, and regardless of how you feel about Donald Trump, we all know that what happened in 2019, the first impeachment, I can't believe we got to talk about it, from that perspective. I'm talking about the first impeachment now because, so many to keep track of.
1.0.
Yeah. Impeachment 1.0. When you go back to 2019, that was such a dog and pony show. And the media carried the water for the Democrats. It was so ho-hum at the time, the Democrats had trouble coming up with a crime to allege, if you recall. And what did they settle on back in 2019 when they impeached Donald Trump? They settled on, quote, abuse of power, end quote. That was the big crime of Donald Trump in 2019. That's what they ultimately settled on, abuse of power, in addition to defiance of Congress's subpoenas. But they did it anyway. So the emotional side of me, understanding what I think is clear corruption from the president's family members and how much he's involved still remains to be seen. But if Joe was not involved, if Joe was truly completely unaware of what was going on, then frankly, he's even dumber than we thought. Which is saying something.
God save the Queen, man.
So with that being said, the emotional side of me is like, just, gosh, good. Go after him, get him, and you know what? Payback is a bleep. But then there's the other side. Then there's the non-emotional side. That's the part when I use my brain for a little bit, which isn't often, but I try to do it. And that part of me wonders, okay, if we were actually making progress on these investigations, which we have, and by the way, public opinion suggests that Americans are actually following this and they're actually buying into what these Republican House investigations are doing. A recent CNN poll indicates that despite Biden's numerous denials, Biden is believed by 61% of Americans to have been involved in influence peddling activities of his son. And 42% believe he acted illegally. 6 out of 10 Americans believe that he was involved in the Hunter Biden business activities. And that's, by the way, with media establishment, for the most part, protecting him. There's not much that 61% of Americans agree on today. And in a CNN poll, 61% of Americans think that Joe is in bed with Hunter, of course, business-wise. That means that what Republicans have been doing has been working, despite the fact that they've got all the headwinds running against them. So does it make sense to break stride with that right now? Does it make sense to go down the road of impeachment inquiry if what you're doing is working from the standpoint of public opinion? Because none of this is actually about impeaching Joe Biden, right? It's not actually about getting him out of office, because even if you impeach him in the House, the Senate will never convict him. You need 2/3 of the Senate, 66 senators, to convict him, and the Democrats have the majority. So there's no way you can convict the guy in the U.S. Senate. So then the question is, if the strategy that you've deployed is working and working effectively, does it make sense to go down the road of even bringing up the I word, which is impeachment, at the risk of all the people, the swing voters who have actually been buying into your investigations, do you risk potentially making it look like an overtly partisan act? That's the question. And I think Kevin McCarthy, ultimately, the Speaker of the House, is feeling a tremendous amount of pressure from his right flank. And that would be not just President Trump, who, by the way, supported Kevin McCarthy for Speaker of the House in many respects. He's got a good relationship with the guy, but also many of Donald Trump's supporters and acolytes in the House of Representatives. I think that's where he's feeling the pressure. But Kevin McCarthy, I don't believe, has the votes to go ahead and do the impeachment inquiry via a vote. That's why he did not do it yesterday. He just announced that he's going down the road of an impeachment inquiry without having a vote. And Democrats are going to use that. How are they going to use that? They're going to say Kevin McCarthy doesn't even have the votes amongst Republicans to go down this road. And then if they continue and they do end up voting on this, and not every single Republican goes along with it, well, that could be problematic as well. That could result in a situation where Joe Biden then can pull the old, I've been exonerated. Even Republicans aren't all sold on me, being worthy of impeachment. I'm just bringing up both sides of it because, yes, the emotional side to me says, go get him. But then the other side of me, the side that uses my head once in a while, thinks to myself, does this make the most political sense? Because all that matters is making sure in 2024 you hold the House, you, God willing, regain the Senate, and then if you can pull off the White House, then you can actually make real change in this country. Because without those three things happening, there is no real change coming. It's going to be impossible. 913-408-7710. That is also the text line on KCMO Talk Radio. We could be hours away from the United Auto Workers strike. What could that mean here locally? It's all coming up. Well, this may be the best point we've gotten on the text line thus far on the impeachment inquiry opened up to President Biden. Welcome in on a Wednesday morning. It doesn't change a whole lot in terms of having the impeachment inquiry. It's not proceedings. It's just, basically moving along with the process. It does allow some different things. And we'll talk to Jason Smith, by the way, of Ways and Means Committee, Missouri Congressman, east side of the state. He's going to be here in a half hour to dive into some of the details around this. So do not miss that conversation. He is one of the key players in this impeachment inquiry. But this is a great text that we got here from 4246. Pete, we are giving Democrats a way out to get rid of Biden so he can't run. Instead, they should have waited until after the election if he won and go after him then. Or at least wait until it's too late to change candidates. They're going to energize the base of the Democrats with this. Republicans screw it up again. That is 4246 on the text line, which is 913-408-7710. I hadn't thought about that, but that texter's point brings up a Washington Post piece. I don't know if you saw this, but the Washington Post, using its editorial board 9 hours ago. Actually, in fairness, it's not the editorial board. It's a columnist in the Washington Post. And the headline here, President Biden should not run for re-election in 2024. But when you're seeing pieces like that pop up in the Washington Post, it does make you wonder if this is their off-ramp from Joe Biden. If this is their reason to basically move on from the guy. Victor is in Parkville. He has been waiting. What's up, Vic? You're on KCMO.
Oh, man, great topic. The thing, and I agree with you to some extent that there are some ups and downs, but for the most part, I think it's all ups because, when you're winning, stay on the offensive. And they need to stay on the offensive to continue getting the documents that are being protected by the IRS, the FBI, the CIA, and the entire Justice Department. Because all these guys are running distractive plays and screening for Biden, showing again just how strong and arrogant the deep state really is.
Now,
And so,
I see your analogy there. Let me ask you, Victor, do you play golf?
I have hacked at the ground a little bit.
Okay,
yes,
all
on
right,
occasion.
all right. So you know the game of golf, right?
Yes.
So I see what you're saying when you say, hey, when you're winning, put the foot to the pedal there and just keep going. But what if I made this golf analogy to you, Victor, and follow me here? You're leading the golf tournament, right? And you've been doing it with just kind of cautious play. You're not always hitting driver off the tee. You're not getting too cute. You're not getting too crazy. And you're using 3-wood sometimes. You're just, you're playing a cautious game, but you're winning the tournament. If you're sitting there with a 2-stroke lead on the 18th hole, and you're looking at a huge, let's say a pond right in front of you, right? And you're like, all right, what's the play here? Do I try to crush it over the pond, or do I lay up? What do I do? I'm going to win the tournament. I've been playing cautious thus far, but I can win the tournament. Some people would argue that what Republicans are doing right now is taking out the driver, when what they've been doing has been working thus far. So I understand the point you're making here, which is keep going, keep going, keep going. But if what they've been doing is working and just allowing these committees to go drip, 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 why stop that?
Well, but this is the point. They're not breaking out the driver. They're still using, to stay with your analogy, they're still using the irons. The problem is the documents that they need, the information that they actually need to look at to continue these committees going forward is being protected by these agencies, and they need to turn the heat up a little bit more, or to use a battlefield, they need to continue going forward to the next trench to get that next level of information. And that's unless they actually amp it up a little bit more so that the judges go, okay, this has gone to a separate level or whatever it is, they're not going to get the documentation that they need to move this investigation forward. Yes, if 60% of the people already believe this from what they see, imagine what they're going to see or what they're going to turn to when they finally get the SARS information, when they finally get the other documentation that's out there to actually prove just how deep. I mean, who's the one that set up all these shell organizations? Who is the one that's actually getting all the money? How many people, the witnesses that actually will sit down and say, yes, I actually informed Joe Biden of what was going on. When all this information is actually getting put out, then maybe some of those people who were kind of on the fence, they may actually turn. And if they're actually successful in it, and the guys on Red Eye were talking about it, if they're actually successful in impeaching Joe Biden or getting him to resign, then now you have the sitting president of Harris, and she is going to either have to be primaried or she will then be running, and perhaps they have some interior polling that shows Trump can beat Harris.
Yeah, well, I think he could beat Joe, too. Victor, what do you want me to ask Jason Smith?
Just keep going at it. I mean,
right.
Are they good? Well, don't back down.
All right.
I mean, I don't really.
That's
no
more
real
of a comment.
questions.
That's more of a comment.
I think they're doing the. Yeah, I think they're really. I think they're going on the right side. I think they're doing the right thing.
All right, cool, man. Have a great day.
Great show.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. 913-408-7710 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM and 103.7 FM. Plus, as you join us early this morning and you're getting to the office, you can stream us on the KCMO Talk Radio app. That's always a great way to find us as well. If you haven't been paying attention, the United Auto Workers may be set to strike here. We are going up against the deadline, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow night is the deadline, as the 146,000 union members are, I think at this point, pretty much likely to strike against the Detroit automakers. Now, that will have impacts here locally. You've got union workers at the Clay Como Ford plant and Fairfax's GM plant that will obviously be involved with this. Now, Woke 41 spoke with UAW, United Auto Workers Local 31 President Dante Wilson, to understand why union workers might strike and what reduced strike pay could mean for its members. And here's the quote from President Wilson. He says here, the energy is high. There's a bunch of anxiety. I mean, you're talking about people's livelihoods. Understandably, there is some angst out there. Now, they've been through this as recently as 2019. He went on to say, there's a great deal of support from the community as a whole, and we expect exactly that because, to be quite honest with you, our members are the community, and our members put so much into the KCK metro area, both sides. That is the quote from UAW Local 31 President Dante Wilson, as we're about, 30 hours away from this potential strike. Now, there might be folks who are listening. You might be one of those workers on the early shift, or you're coming off a shift. Who knows? That listens to this radio station and listens to this show. Something tells me, as is often the case with these union strikes, the run-of-the-mill worker gets caught between the corporation and I'm speaking broadly here, the corrupt union bosses. And I worry that that's exactly what is going on in this situation once again. And we've seen it happen far too many times. And you don't have to take my word for it. The UAW president, the quote from this guy that I've got in front of me from CNBC is the exact kind of thing that makes me shake my head. As if they're fighting for the little guy. And unions, and I say this broadly, stopped fighting for the little guy a very long time ago. They are part of the corrupt establishment. And the little guy is just the pawn in all this. So why would CNN break this story? I've been trying to figure that out for the last couple of minutes. We just had on Missouri Congressman Jason Smith. He is one of the leaders in the House on the impeachment inquiry of President Biden that was launched yesterday by Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy. So CNN dropped this morning. This is, I don't think this is what the White House wanted. So it makes me wonder what CNN's motivations are here. CNN story headline, White House to send letter to news execs urging outlets to ramp up scrutiny of GOP's Biden impeachment inquiry based on lies. So the White House plans to send a letter to top U.S. news executives today, urging them to intensify their scrutiny of House Republicans after Speaker Kevin McCarthy launched an impeachment inquiry. Ian Sams, spokesperson for the White House counsel's office, wrote in this letter, which CNN obtained because they probably received the letter, saying, quote, it is time for the media to ramp up its scrutiny of House Republicans for opening an impeachment inquiry based on lies. The letter, which said an impeachment inquiry with no supporting evidence, should, quote, set off alarm bells for news organizations. Well, if that's the case, they would have done the same thing back in 2019 with the previous guy. But, of course, that didn't happen. No, that did not happen.
Nobody cares.
Oh, my goodness. You want to talk about setting off alarm bells for news organizations? If they had any decency and respect left in those newsrooms, that would have been very evident 4 years ago. Of course, that did not happen. Instead, Donald Trump's 2019 impeachment was treated like reality TV. I mean, you remember that as well as I do. It was a circus, a complete circus. But now that it's happening on the other end, it's like, whoa, this should set off alarm bells. And apparently this letter was sent to not just CNN, but it was also sent to the New York Times and Fox News, interestingly. The White House sending this letter out. So the White House is asking the media to do its bidding for them. Now, that is nothing new, but it's not okay. The White House should in no way be encouraging, influencing, or interfering in editorial strategies in America's newsrooms, even at CNN and the New York Times. And the fact that CNN leaked this letter tells me that they're offended by it, which means there might actually be some standards left in that newsroom.
Talk about a bombshell.
I know. I'm as shocked as you are. But if CNN wanted to play along here with this, they would not have leaked the letter. They wouldn't have put the letter out there publicly and said, yeah, can you believe the White House is sending us a letter suggesting that, we basically do what they tell us to do? Now, that doesn't mean that they won't, in large part. But the fact that they ratted out the White House on this tells me that they weren't happy about receiving this letter. Because here's what's interesting. They would have done the bidding anyway. I don't think CNN needed to receive the letter from the White House. I think CNN is insulted that they got this letter from the White House. CNN's probably saying to themselves, the head honchos there, yeah, no, don't worry. We were going to do your bidding anyway. And they probably were also worried about Fox News leaking the letter first. So they want to look like the good guys here, John. I think that's part of what's happening.
You don't want to take the wife to a big formal business function and go, hey, could you act impressive this time? Right. That goes over real well.
Yeah. Spoken as somebody who's maybe tried it before, you sound like you speak from experience.
No, I learned that lesson ahead of time. But this seems like at CNN, right? You tell the missus to act impressive this time.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, this tells me as well that the Biden administration is worried here. They are worried that there's going to be a lot more smoke around this story, and they don't trust the media to do their bidding for them. Therefore, they actually have to ask them this time to do it for them. And that means they're nervous. That's the conclusion here. They are nervous about what is going to potentially come out via this impeachment inquiry. Because otherwise, why would they feel the need to reach out to CNN of all places? As if any of us were unsure who CNN's side was going to be on the impeachment inquiry. So we will watch this thing closely and see how it plays out. And yes, as Jason Smith said, follow the facts. Not what anybody wants to be true, but just follow the facts. The political implications, those remain to be seen. And we'll be getting into that throughout the morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. Welcome in. Happy Hump Day Wednesday. Thanks for joining us on KCMO. Well, I don't want to say there's a high bar for writing the best opinion piece I've seen in the Kansas City Star. I mean, it's a very low bar. It's kind of like the tallest, smallest person, you know what I mean? One of those kind of a situations. I don't want to go down that road, but you get the point. But it pointed out some important hypocrisies. The headline here from Stephen Alcorn. It might be Stefan, I'm not sure. Stephonn. Anyway, Mr. Alcorn writes here, headline, Johnson County votes progressive, but do our politics stop at our property lines? The answer to that question is yes. Just like they do in Martha's Vineyard. When you have a group of illegal immigrants sent there to Martha's Vineyard by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis last year, and then the same people who have their signs in their front yards that say in this house, we believe love is love, Black Lives Matter, no humans illegal. Well, they shipped them off that island in record time, baby. The hypocrisy was clear as day. And yes, there's a part of that happening right here in Johnson County. The article goes on the note here. Today, cities around the country are revisiting a question previously seen as unchangeable here in the Kansas City metropolitan area. Who gets to live in Johnson County? Who gets to live in the most progressive county in Kansas? The same county that Representative Sharice Davids has held on to for 3 cycles and the backbone of last year's monumental no vote upholding abortion rights. It's an uncomfortable question. Writes the Star, the mere exploration has already triggered fear-mongering about increases in crime and decreases in property value in neighborhood associations and city council meetings, all while failing to address the fundamental question, who gets to live in Johnson County? And even more, do our progressive politics stop at our property lines? The answer is yes, just like in Martha's Vineyard. You know, I've been very supportive of the property rights owners in Prairie Village who are signing petitions to try to prevent their city council from rezoning every empty lot they can to build multifamily homes. I've been very supportive of that movement, and I'm actually going to be emceeing an event with the Stop Rezoning PV crowd next month. I'll have more details for you in the coming weeks about that. But I wholly admit that, when it comes to like run-of-the-mill politics, I probably don't see eye to eye with a lot of the people who agree with me, or a lot of the people that I agree with, on how the city council in Prairie Village is rezoning every free lot that they've got available. But I'm willing to support them, one, because it's right, it's the right thing to do, to support communities that move and people that move into communities expecting a single-family neighborhood, a single-family home environment. That's why they move there. And instead, what they get is a city council that just willy-nilly rezones at every street corner they can find to, pad their own bottom lines at city government. I think that's wrong. So I'll support them. I don't care if we disagree on other stuff, but I'll support them. But yes, they are massive hypocrites, right? If you are somebody in Prairie Village who has had a sign outside of your house in the wake of 2020, one of those, in this house, we believe no human's illegal, blah, blah, all this kind of woke nonsense. But then you're also freaking out about a potential apartment complex being built behind your home. You're a hypocrite. Very clear as day. Now, I'll support you because I'm a good guy. I'm trying to help you out here. I really
Such
am.
a nice man.
So I'm willing to still support you, but I will call out your hypocrisy. Because it's amazing how those signs only mean something when it comes to everybody else. But when you have a chance to put your money where your mouth is with those signs, it's like, no. I don't want to be bothered. No. Don't involve me in any of that. I just want to have the sign outside my house. I don't actually want to live that life. But then what do? They go and they vote for somebody like Sharice Davids. Oh, because they love the idea of the boxes that Sharice Davids checks off that makes them feel better about themselves. Because they have enormous amounts of wealth guilt, white guilt, and that makes them feel like, well, they're part of solving the problem in a way that doesn't actually make them responsible for solving the problems that they insist are out there. Racism, wealth inequality. They don't actually have to do anything. They can just do things that create talking points at cocktail parties, but don't require them to put their money where their mouth is. It is massively hypocritical. And by the way, it's happening in suburban communities around the country. Suburban communities that are continuing to trend leftward, trend bluer. We're seeing that in Kansas City. We're seeing that in different places all over the country. They're not living the lifestyles of what they're voting for. They're oftentimes individuals who have, quote unquote, done life the way that prevents poverty. They've gotten their GED, which is all you need. They've gotten married. They've had kids in that order. As Dave Ramsey has said, you have a 99% chance of staying out of poverty if you do life in that order. It's not rocket science, right? They've done life in that order. They've achieved some type of wealth and success. They've raised their family, right? They do all those things. But then they have such guilt about doing those things that they vote for people who outwardly promote the opposite of what they have done and the blueprint that they have used to achieve their own success. It makes absolutely no sense. But that's one of the many weird cultural things that we find ourselves dealing with right now. And maybe it turns, a lot of it is just Trump-triggered stuff, which, is a totally different conversation. But it is incredible when you get down to it, the hypocrisy that is all over the place in many of these communities. But I'll still support them. I'll still support them on the single-family stuff. I will. Now, I know you don't want to hear it, but there is a downside to this impeachment inquiry of Joe Biden. and it is political in nature. It's not about, by the way, good morning, welcome in, happy Wednesday. It is not about, anything when it comes to the facts of this case. Figuring out Joe Biden's role with Hunter Biden's business dealings, which, there's a lot of smoke there. It stinks to high heaven. We know that Hunter was making millions of dollars off of Daddy's name. The question is, what did Daddy know? And there's only really two options here when it comes to what Joe Biden knew. Either one, he was in on the entire thing, which clearly is impeachable. The other part of it is that he wasn't in on it, and he literally had no idea, in which case you question how dumb the man is. Seriously, there's no other conclusion to come to here. Either Joe knew what was going on, and if he didn't, then you have to be a complete fool to say, how does my son, who has no experience in oil and gas, end up on the board of a Ukrainian oil company and clear, $80-something thousand a month? Wow, Hunter, way to go. I'm proud of you, kid. Either way, it's not flattering for the president of the United States. Now, I think I know which of those two is the answer, but of course I will wait for the facts to unfold. I'll do the responsible thing, the right thing here, and wait for the facts to unfold. But there is a political downfall here, potentially, for Republicans that they have to be aware of at least. And that is, this allows Joe Biden to play the victim card. Joe Biden can now potentially say, look at these guys. They are just going down the road of impeachment because, we got their golden goose. We went after their boy, their MAGA man, their MAGA savior, MAGA Mooga. He can say MAGA 25 times in 2 minutes. Donald Trump. He can play that card more so now than he could have yesterday. Over the last several weeks and couple of months, he really hasn't had a good defense. The White House hasn't had a good defense. And as a result, you've seen public opinion change on this. You've seen public opinion in CNN polls suggest that the majority of the American people think that Biden and the Biden family were doing something fishy here. That was in a CNN poll from earlier this week. And Biden hasn't had a good answer for it. The White House has not had a good answer for it. But now they've got the potential to do the yeah, but Trump thing. And don't take my word for it. Take Dick Durbin, Illinois U.S. Senator. He was on CNN yesterday, and here's what he said.
Are you comfortable with what Hunter Biden was doing, obviously making money because his dad was at the time vice president? He didn't have any experience with Ukrainian gas companies, and he was put on the board of Burisma. I know that he's not the first person to cash in on a connection to a powerful father, but doesn't that make you uncomfortable?
Yes, it does. And it does for Jared Kushner to have done the same thing under President Trump. We've got to establish some standards for members of family. I'm not saying that Hunter Biden broke the law or that there should be any punishment involved in it, but I don't feel good about the situation.
Look how quickly Dick Durbin of Illinois pivoted to, yeah, but Trump. It was like, yeah, I do, but hey, that guy Jared Kushner. To compare, and I have no reason to defend Jared Kushner. I have no feelings on Jared Kushner either way. But to compare Jared Kushner, who had a highly successful private sector career long before his father-in-law stepped into the White House, to compare him to a guy who was smoking crack and hanging out with hookers at every opportunity, who ends up on the board of Ukrainian oil companies for $80,000 a month, I wouldn't call that apples to oranges. Or I would call it apples to oranges is what I would do. I would. Clearly those two are not the same. But hey, don't let it get in the way of the narrative, right? And that's clearly the approach here. Anything that they can do to bring up Trump here is going to be the goal. Because at this point, this is what's fascinating as we move full steam ahead, unfortunately, towards a Trump-Biden rematch. And I don't think that's good for the country at all. There's nothing about that rematch that benefits this country. Nothing about it. But unfortunately, if you're a betting person right now, I mean, that's the overwhelming favorite, a Biden-Trump rematch. Joe Biden may be the only person Donald Trump can beat, and Donald Trump may be the only person Joe Biden can beat. Think about that. So now we're in this race towards the bottom, where basically people are going to have to decide. Well, the bases are going to do their thing, right? Republicans will show up for Trump. Democrats will show up for Biden. The question is going to be the handful of swing voters who are left and the handful of swing states that are left. Who do they think is less of a menace to the White House? That's really what it's going to come down to. Who are they more tolerant of? Donald Trump, who, I would argue, far superior policies, a bit of a knucklehead, but far superior policies. Certainly mishandled himself at the end of his first term. Or Joe Biden, who the evidence continues to show has plenty of smoke around what he knew around his son and, by the way, his brother's business dealings, and who is getting rich off of Joe's vice presidency. That's what the handful of swing voters are ultimately going to decide. And by the way, that may be fine with Donald Trump. This is actually good for Donald Trump. Because Trump knows that if he's the nominee, he's got to win over these swing voters. And he's not going to do it through charm. He could, but he's not going to do it through charm. He's going to have to do it by saying, look at Joe. He's dirty. He's a criminal. His family's a bunch of criminals. They've been robbing the taxpayers for 40 years. That's because that's what Trump is. Trump wants to get in the mud with you. He wants to mud wrestle you. That's been his style since he was doing real estate in New York City in the 1970s. That's what he knows. And by the way, it worked for him the first time around with Hillary. He's going to want to go back to that well once again. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be good for the country. But by the way, Democrats love doing that too. Just ask Mitt Romney about that. Ask John McCain, rest in peace, about that and what Joe Biden was saying during those two races, right? Talking about how, what was Joe's famous line? They're going to put you all back in chains. That's what Joe Biden said to black people in 2012 when he was running against Mitt Romney with Barack Obama for re-election. So let's not act like, they approach elections from a holier-than-thou high and mighty perspective. They don't. It gets ugly, but Trump certainly wants to make it ugly. And the more that he can drag Joe through the mud with this kind of impeachment inquiry, the better it is for him if he is the nominee. And that's going to be his best bet. But the downside here is that Joe plays the victim. The downside is if Republicans don't have the votes to potentially impeach Joe Biden when all is said and done, Joe can claim exoneration. See, even Republicans wouldn't impeach me. He can look like an innocent bystander who got caught up in the political winds of the moment. And that's the risk. I'm not saying this is the wrong move, but there is a political risk that can't be denied. 913-408-7710 as we approach 8:15 on a Wednesday morning on KCMO Talk Radio. What If Wednesday, of course, at the end of the hour. Do you see a political downside here? Or are you just like, you know what? No. Go after them. I want to see the whole thing burnt down. I want to know every single thing that we can possibly find out about this guy. And if maybe it hurts us a little bit politically, well, guess what? So be it. 913-408-7710. That's also the text line here on KCMO Talk Radio. Pete Mundo on 710 AM and 103.7 FM.